Can we talk about March? Because I feel like March is the month when everything really starts to feel different. Everything is likely to change. I mean, March is such a massive month with big celestial planets changing signs, entering new phases. And I think that is when we really are going to start to feel like things are different. It peaks in May, and then we get a little bit of a respite after that to a certain extent, especially once we get into June. And so let's talk about March in particular. A few things off the top of my head. Saturn changes signs. So after 28 and a half years, Saturn is returning to the sign of Pisces. And wherever Saturn goes, it makes us get real, look at how things actually are, but also represents an element of restriction as well. And I think this is so interesting. I think that this whole rise in astrology in particular that I've seen since 2012 has been because of Neptune in Pisces and this desire that more of us have for spiritual connection, spiritual meaning, spiritual experience. Well, what happens when there's a restrictive factor there? We're asked to really embody that spirituality more. So that's just one way that energy might be realized. But the very big news that I think everybody is talking about, lots of people ask me like daily, Pluto is going to dip into the sign of Aquarius. And I think that represents a huge cultural shift. We'll get a little taste of it this year, a little taste next year before we more comfortably move into that cycle. But altogether, it'll be a 20-year cycle. And, Pluto and Aquarius, I have been saying, I remember back in 2018, 2019 saying, the world that we start the 2020s with will be a very different world that we end the 2020s with. And it really is Pluto dipping into Aquarius that represents the very beginning of that. What do you think? What are you feeling about what's coming up this year?
Couple of years ago, I predicted, because I dreamt that we would have a revolution, and I dreamt that it would start in mid to late February, where the brewings behind the scenes would be going on. We may not know it, but it is. It's even being spoken of as we speak today. But by late February, it's going to be a thrust. And so what I think I'm feeling and seeing is that mid March, it's going to it's going to be kicked up. By May, anybody who wasn't paying attention will know there may be a revolution in front of us.
And where do you feel that that is likely?
I think many countries, first starting in the US, then sliding into Canada, and other countries will take form. Let's just look at it. It's like the truck convoy on steroids. And the convoy did not get violent, but there may be more violence this time around. The convoy did not produce looting. This time around, there will be this type of thing. So I don't want to put a fear-mongering thing out there, because it's about the only thing that can shift us. How might we take our countries back otherwise? Now, I don't see it as bad as, let's say, Russia and Ukraine. No, I don't see that. If anything, it'd be more civil upheaval and blatant disrespect and rebellious folks against government. I think there will be an overtaking of our governments, and I'm not sure how civilized that's going to look yet. But I do think that's going to be pushed, and the government's going to have to come to task and acquiesce.
That's what you're feeling. Last time we had the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto, well, the more recent last time was January of 2020, right? That conjunction in the sign of Capricorn, the last time that happened was the Protestant Reformation. And if you think about what the Protestant Reformation represented, it was a reconfiguring of our relationship to power and our relationship to God itself. I mean, what helps us to know ourselves differently other than knowing our relationship to a higher power differently in some way? That really is what the Protestant Reformation represented. It's the power away from the intermediaries, which the Catholic Church represented, and put the power in your ability to read the text and decide what it means, read the Bible and decide what it means for yourself, which was
Yeah.
sacrilege up
Yeah.
until the Protestant Reformation. But I think that that really was the force that created the world that we have today. But the other thing to take into consideration as well is we ended 2020 with the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn and in Aquarius, right? That 0 degree Aquarius. So we had these really powerful energies there. And when we saw that happen previously, the invention of the printing press, the beginning of information reaching the masses. And
Mhm.
so my friend Rick Levine, I remember sharing this in a video that we were doing together with a group, and he said, if if the Great Conjunction in Aquarius took us from an oral culture to a paper culture, it is going to be now that we move to a paperless culture. So I think it'll be
Absolutely.
interesting to see how that happens. But, you know, I actually think of it as the energy of Aquarius is so, it's about the collective, but it's also hyper individualistic. It's about what the masses are doing, but it's also hyper niche. And I think that it is likely to be that more people are going to be able to do their own thing, but in their own pockets to decide how they're going to live and what they're going to do.
That's what we were saying. The revolution will produce that. And that is a good thing because this is what we've been kind of wanting for a long time. We really have. We've been spinning out of control with our hurried lives and our city ways and wanting everything so quickly. You know, like we want satisfaction really quickly, and we need to sort of reach back and pull up some of the old basic ways of managing health wise, for instance. You know, nature, food, growing your own food, you know, understanding herbs, all of it. So I think this revolution is a good one. It's a personal one too, about something in terms of yourself and what you need to change in you to produce what you really want. So I mean, I'm living in Vancouver Island here. People work from 11 till 4. You know, we're from Ontario, Toronto. It was like 9 to 6. 7 days a week. Here is lucky if you got a store open 5. That's a lucky thing to find here. So, you know, there's this a realization that we don't want to live like that anymore. And I think that we are also not going to want to live under the thumb of mandates and restrictions that are going to put us out of business again or put us out of our homes again. So I think that kickback is get the, let's say, the tax breaks that they had hoped for. They didn't. They did a lot of this and little came. I do think this year will also be any revolution that we have will be instigated by people of color and likely women. So the sort of minority energy will push a lot of this energy forward. And then here we go. This is going to be one of the biggest years of change. And then we're going to go right into about 30, 40 years of change. So, you know, I won't even be here to watch some of the way we go, but there'll be some interesting curves. And I think this beginning of a whole new era. This is really the spin-off of what we've been talking about, the age of Aquarius. This is it.
I will say, based on some of the things you shared, you know, when I look at how astrologically, it just looks like we're going in a direction of you do you and I'm going to do me.
Yeah.
That's the direction it seems to be going in. This hyper niche world and allowing everybody to be who they are because I'm going to be who I am and I'm going to do
Yeah.
what I'm going to do. And so it makes sense that some of those niches will be very nature oriented, very rooted in that world. Some of those niches are going to want to reject and be off
Yeah.
grid per se.
That,
So, and then of course others won't. Other people will not necessarily be thinking
yeah.
along those lines. I am an Aquarius after all. I love technology.
We learned about division when we realized not everybody got the vax, or some people didn't want to mask up, and you know, and people everybody started having different opinions. We saw it on Facebook, people stopping friendships because of their divided thoughts. But I think we're going to learn to understand that in each other as an okay thing because you know it's your mother that thinks different than you. You can't get rid of her. You like her. So you're going to start to soften up and be okay with, you know, these different ways of thinking, different unusual ways of thinking.